Welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library. My name is Gina Veerwell, Collections Development Librarian for Gwinnett County Public Library. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's Author Talk. Today, we are honored to be joined by Esme Addison. Esme Addison is the Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com bestselling author and Agatha nominee for Best First Book. She is a member of Sisters in Crime National, international thriller writer in Crime Writers of Color, and resides in coastal North Carolina with her family. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So, just as a first question for the audience members that haven't quite gotten through the book or just hearing about the book today, what is An Intrigue of Witches about?
That is a loaded question, but briefly, it's about a historian from the Smithsonian who was is on the search for an ancient artifact in a small town in North Carolina, and she discovers that it is related to a magical heritage in her own family. That's the very briefest way to describe it. But I will say that in that it includes lots of American history, ancient artifacts, magic, real settings, real characters from history.
So, speaking of the historical part of the book, I did notice that there were a lot of period and pieces for like the artifacts that the main character was actually seeking after. Specifically, I was very interested by the pie safe because I was trying to figure out what exactly it does. So I went down a research rabbit hole when I was looking at it. But how did you pick out those pieces for this story?
Right. And so that was that's my hope when people read this book, that they will go down many rabbit holes, because there's so many real things to research, including the pie safe, which I actually came up with the pie safe because I was doing some antiquing with my mother and we came across a pie safe. And I just got really kind of fascinated with, like, why were there pie safes? Like, why were people locking up their pies? It was just like kind of like an interesting like piece of furniture. And I just, when I was trying to create puzzles, I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna put a pie safe in the story, because it's just something that's kind of interesting, and because I needed different kinds of furniture and things like that. But in terms of what your question was, how did I come up with? I'm sorry, what was your question? Because kind of went on a tangent.
How did you come up with the pieces that you decided to include in the book?
Right. So I just kind of like, I created like the story first, and then I kind of went back and like, and as I wrote the story, I had an idea of like, okay, I need to put puzzle here. There needs to be some sort of a code here. So I just kind of had like a placeholder for those, and I kind of wrote the whole thing. And then I went back and like after researching different types of codes, like I did a deep dive into like all the different types of like puzzles and codes that have been used in ancient Egypt, in the American Revolution with like George Washington and the culper ring. What was used during the Civil War, what's used contemporary in escape rooms, and just tried to like create concepts based on those. I think it was a lot of fun, but yeah, it was a lot of research.
So I'm guessing based on the way you're talking about it, you're either a plotter or a pantser, and I think I have it right. But what's your writing process like? Like, are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
I'm gonna say that I am a plantser. I'm a little bit of both. I definitely do. I definitely plot kind of broadly. Like, I know how it's going to begin, how it ends, and a lot of what's happening in the middle. But then I just kind of like kind of wing it in the middle, to kind of get to those points, which I do have plotted out. And I do that because it's just it's more fun for me creatively to have a little bit of flexibility with like the story as I'm going, like, no, but having those points, those guide points, like, okay, I know I need to get from A to B, but let me just kind of like be creative and think about what may happen, and that those parts can change.
Okay, so I noticed that there were touches of like the movie, The National Treasure, in this book. but I wasn't sure if that was really what you were trying to convey in the book, like whether you were trying to convey like this person that gets called upon and there's a lot of money at the end of the story, so they go on this wild goose chase to find this thing. So what was the inspiration behind this book?
Right. So I mean, I have gotten a lot of comparisons to National Treasure, and I saw that movie like when it first came out, like I don't know, 20 years ago. I don't know when it came out. It was a long time ago, so I haven't seen it since then. But it made an impact on me because it just was such a fun kind of like caper. It was something that I would love to do. Like I would love to go on like that kind of like, treasure hunt that's connected to history and have to do the codes and things like that. So I mean, it's always been in the back of my mind. But what really inspired me was, I really, are you familiar with Steve Barry, the author?
I think
Um,
so, yes.
he has
Yes.
a long running Cotton Malone series, and it's a government agent who owns a antique bookstore, which is kind of like his cover, but he really does have the bookstore, and he's always going on these hunts for artifacts that have these really bizarre mysteries associated with it, but based on fact. And so I've always loved that series, and I always thought one day I would like to write something like that. So I would say that it's probably more in alignment with like that as in terms of inspiration. And I asked him to blurb my book, and he did. I was so excited because he read it and he loved it. So I was like, I have done my job.
That's so amazing. Okay, so what part of the book was the most fun to write? And if you can you read a passage from your favorite part to us?
I actually don't have any copies with me. um, let's see, I sold them all at my last event, and I don't have any with me. But God, what was the most fun? That's a hard one. It's let's see. I think when she's kind of really like getting, I know, I will say when she goes to New Bern and there's a chase scene through downtown New Bern, and she's going through Tryon Palace and the grounds looking for like clues and things like that. That was really fun because that, again, that's something that I would really love to do personally. And it was just like, so kind of living vicariously through my character and creating these scenes and things like that. But that was a lot of fun and imagining it as I write it. I've been to New Bern a couple times, so I was really trying to like think like, okay, what is this street corner here? What's there? Where would she run? What's there? And trying to make it as accurate as possible.
I've read your other books, the Enchanted Bay
Oh,
Mystery
thank you.
series,
Okay.
and I've noticed that a lot of your main characters actually have the power of telepathy, so they can talk with others. So, if you had a superpower or a gift, what would it be? And what made you choose the specific gifts that the characters have in this book?
Right. So in this particular book, I tried to go along with what would make sense for the artifact. And I don't want to give spoilers on what it is, but the artifact that's in the book is actually it actually is purported to have these abilities to confer kingship onto a person. It actually when during the coronation, when the king or queen sits on it, they are actually supposedly the stone actually emits a squeal. It's like I didn't make any of that up, and so I was just trying to think like if there was a person that had like a connection to this artifact, like what would actually what kind of abilities would they have. And I honestly didn't want to be like too fanciful with this one. Like my other series is a little more fancy, a little more fantasy. With this one, it's a little more based in science, and it kind of goes into like quantum physics and quantum science and things like that. So I just wanted some kind of like basic abilities that were beneficial to the it made sense in the context. So I just, like I said, I thought like telepathy seemed like something that's not too out there. We can, we all have like a little bit of telepathy, you know what I mean, in terms of like you might think about like your sister, your brother, and then they call you. like to me, that's kind of there's a kind of telepathy that that people have, or just like So I just wanted to give her some things, some abilities that are really almost like heightened um, abilities, heightened a heightened version of things that we already have.
So, what would your superpower be if you had one?
Right. I would say the ability to read people's thoughts, but I don't know if I would want that. That would get, I feel like it would get too chaotic. You know what I mean? But to know a person's true intent, maybe something along those lines. Nothing like flying or getting, becoming invisible. I don't know. I don't really need those, I'm not interested in that kind of stuff.
So, which of the characters do you relate to the most in this book, and why?
Um, I mean, they're all very different. I would think the only one that's really like me, the main character, I mean, she's not based on me or anything like that, but I we're both very interested in history and in researching in artifacts. So I mean, I think I would say that she's probably the one that I most associate with. There's just nobody else that I really it's not the grandmother, not Bess, but just the love for history and the interest in like research and finding truth in in things because she's kind of researching conspiracies and trying to get like to the bottom of like stuff that's happening. So that interests me as well.
So, would you say that was the main character's driving motivation throughout the book? I asked because I've noticed that, like, at the beginning of the book, she was just woefully distrustful of anything Abner would say to her, but she would still continue to look for these clues, this artifact.
But
And I was just like, what is driving her?
right. Well, I think, initially it's just like the money. That's kind of what gets her there. She loses her job. She's offered this check and she's, in a financial situation where she's like almost out of debt and trying, so that it just, that looks very attractive to her. But then I think once she finds out what the mystery is about, it kind of piques her interest, like her interest in passion for history and like just trying to like she has a background that it's not explored too much, but she solves ancient art, ancient mysteries. Like she is prior to working at the Smithsonian, she was in the field and consulting on digs and trying to like figure out mysteries and things, finding out like the provenance of things, of different types of artifacts and like that kind of thing. So she's just always kind of been driven by a good mystery. So I think once we get beyond like the money, because she doesn't mention it after the beginning, like if and that's it's kind of like on her mind in the very beginning, and then you don't think she really talks about it anymore. um yeah, so she wants to kind of figure out what's going on, and of course once she finds out that there's somehow it's related to her, and when her grandmother is in jeopardy, then it becomes really personal. Like now she's like, who's after me, like why, what is this all about? So I think her her interest, like, it progresses over the course of the book.
So, why cozy mysteries? Why not like thrillers or detective mysteries?
Right. Well, so my first series is a cozy mystery. This one I wouldn't say is a cozy mystery, even though it's in a small town, and but it doesn't have, it's not she's not looking for a murder. Most cozy mysteries are like a murder mystery, I guess. And they don't have you know a search for an artifact. So my publisher had a hard time trying to like define, because when they brought me on, they were like, oh, you're a cozy mystery author, and I was like, nope, not just. I do more. And so I think they were a little surprised with my second book that sorry, so I actually wrote the third book in my other series that's coming out next year for the Enchanted Bay. So I think of that as the first, and this is the second on the publishing contract. um but when I this was sold on proposal, so they just had like a synopsis of what it was about. They didn't have the full, and then I think I kind of surprised them with the amount of like excuse me, the amount of science fiction and fantasy, the level of it. So for this one, they're qualifying. I don't know. They're categorizing it as like mystery adventure, fantasy mystery, It's a hard one, right? But I think it's definitely cozy adjacent. Um, but in terms of like why do I like adding those cozy elements? Like I love writing about small towns. I think it's just interesting to see to kind of, especially with this story, because it's actually like a really big story. You know, it's like there's like worldwide implications. Like there's the U.S. government, and there's this mythology that comes into play, and it's all in this small town. I don't know. That's just it's like a challenge for me to try to put the story in a small town and in the context of like this hominess and coziness, and there is some tea drinking and coffee drinking and some soap, homemade soaps and stuff like that. Like I can't get away from that no matter what. Like even if I did a thriller, I'd still have that stuff in there because that's who I am as a person. So I just like those types of things. But did it feel like a cozy mystery to you?
It actually didn't. I was
Okay.
trying to pinpoint it and I couldn't because I was
Yeah.
just like, well, there's like romanticy, but there's no like misanthropy. Like,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
word for
Actually,
this one.
yeah. I actually had the publishers change like the metadata for like the retailers. So I don't think that it's not listed under cozy mystery at all. It's under a lot of different stuff: mystery, adventure, urban fantasy, sci-fi mystery, like. But it does, detectives. But she's not a detective, So I think but yeah, I mean, my first series was a cozy mystery, but this one is not.
So, speaking of sequels, what can we expect in the next book in this series? Can you tell
Right.
us anything, or are you not allowed? Or
No, I mean, no, there's no one. I mean, I can tell you whatever. I mean, I've already planned it out. I don't want to give away too much just because, it's, I don't want to share like before I've written it. But it is, they do say at the end of the book that she's going to be looking for a wand, a silver wand. And this is, again, it's a real thing that I discovered in my research. The crown jewels, the crown and all the regalia for the Scottish monarchy back in, and I can't remember the date, like the 1700s, 1600s. It was hidden when England was invading, and it was discovered, and there was a silver gilt wand in there along with a crown and some other things, and then that wand went missing. And I was like, hello, I've got my next story. I can't make this stuff up. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just when I read that, I was like, she's got to find the wand. And this gives me a opportunity to like research this myself because I want to know why did the Scottish crown have a wand? Like why? Like I researched it, just to see, and it wasn't wands were not very common. Maces, scepters, so there some of the things that I read said that like the wand kind of came from that, and it went all the way back to ancient Egypt where they had something called the was like was, which is just like a stick that could be about like that tall, that long. So I was trying to like understand like why does this king have like a wand in his like set of like regal stuff? And I was like, well, that's going into my story, and we're gonna figure that out. And I'm actually gonna use like the real facts that are out around what happened, and so it's gonna take her to Scotland, the second half of the story to find out. So I'm excited because I want to do more research to find out to my satisfaction what was this wand. I mean, doesn't it make you think that there had to be like a witch, like there's or some sort of magic maker, like what, you know what I mean, like what else is a wand for traditionally? you know I don't know. In all crown, like all royal like families had like a magic person, a magic maker. They had like a court astronomer. They had um, a court, just like different types of things. But many of them had a person that was like, I don't know what the term is. It's not like a wizard. It's something. They had a person that supposedly had magical abilities that could help them in various ways. So I'm gonna kind of, that's a real history, and so I'm gonna bring that history into this next one. I'm excited.
It sounds exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to Scotland this fall for a conference, and so I'm gonna do some research while I'm there and like go visit the real places that are gonna be in the story.
So, how did you celebrate when you finished this book?
Um,
Did you celebrate
like when I actually finished the book, or like when it came out.
when you finished it?
I finished it. Got I don't remember what I did. I don't really do anything. I might like send my publisher an emoji of a champagne bottle or something. It's done. Something like that. Yeah, I don't think I did anything. I'll do something like the day that the book comes out, but I may just be like, phew, and go take a bath with some Epsom salts and have maybe a glass of wine and some candles and just like relax and watch TV because I haven't looked at like a screen. I mean, like I've been writing, but I haven't been like looking at anything. So I might just do something like that.
Okay, so we actually flew through every single last one of my questions.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I will open it up to audience questions now. So if you're looking,
In my other series, I have a German Shepherd, so you can see I've in my other series she is a short-haired German Shepherd, but my dog is a long-haired and he's a boy, but he's kind of like the one in the series. What did you what were your thoughts about the story as you read it?
I loved it. I was trying to figure out why Sydney was so skeptical and just kept going, especially when like she got attacked. There were so many things that happened to her along the way that I was just like, have you not given up yet?
I think it was the money. It was $1 million on the line. That's what pushed her forward until she started to care about
Okay, so we have one question. When did you know you wanted to write professionally? Any advice for aspiring authors?
it. I have as long as I have a memory, I've always been a writer. I've always loved to read. Always, and my dad always told me I was going to be a writer. Like he somehow like so I never there was never a time when I wasn't interested in writing or thought I would be a writer when I grew up. So like and there are some people that just like a calling, like like what you want to be when you grow up. Like I've always known I want to be a writer. Really, nothing else. And which is funny. Like when I was in college and I majored in English. And my dad was like, "What are you gonna do with your English major?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm gonna write. I'm gonna do something." And he was like, "You gonna maybe teach?" I'm like, "No." But eventually, it worked out. But yeah, I just always knew. It's one of those things. And in terms of advice, I would say really work on the craft of writing, practice writing novels, join a writers group, take classes, whether it's online, read books about how to write and practice and write and edit and have beta readers and other friends read your work, give feedback, and just practice. It's kind of like almost like a creative muscle. Like you have to learn how to do it and then you have to just practice it and keep writing until you get as good as you can be, and then start learning about the business side, how to get an agent, what an agent does. Um, you know, learn. I mean, there's so much information online right now. Like, there's really no reason not to to like find information. Just like learn as much as you can about the business and start to read the industry trades like Publishers Weekly, and things like that. Just kind of learn about the business and get as smart as you can. And then marketing, newsletters, social media for writers, all that comes into play. But the most important part is to learn how to write a book first. Otherwise, none of the other stuff matters.
Okay, and we have another question. How do you separate the protagonist from yourself? I.e., certain characteristics unlike yours, or different food, color, pet preferences? How have you found a character you've written that feels most like yourself?
Okay. I wouldn't say it's really an issue. I mean, I can't speak for all writers, but I think writers really do create a character. And I mean, of course, it's probably safe to say that every character has like a little piece of you, you know. But I mean, for me personally, I really just like I'm creating like whole people. Like she's got different astrological signs, she's got favorite foods, she's got different colors that she likes, everything. There's nothing about her that's similar to me. So there's no issue of like, you know, am I putting myself in the story or anything like that. I don't create characters like that.
Do you have anything else to share?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would love to get some more input on your thoughts about the story. Like, how long did it take you to read it? Did you fly through it, like, or did it take you a couple days?
So in the beginning of the story, it did take me a little bit of while because there was like so many details, and Sydney was so unsure of those details. She was like, "What am I getting myself into? I need the money, but what am I getting myself into?" But about halfway through the book was when I really started to pick up. It was when that point in the book when she almost got ridden off the road.
All
I
right.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Things are happening.
Yeah. Were you able to figure out who was the villain without spoiling it? Who was one?
No, not at
No.
all. I couldn't pinpoint it the whole time. I was like, who is this person?
Right.
I actually thought it was her best friend.
It's so funny that you say that because the story behind this is that it originally the idea was a traditional cozy mystery. It was there was a murder, and it was just like it was the same character, same town, same everything, and Bess was the villain in that original version.
Oh,
And I
okay.
completely,
Okay.
yeah, so she actually was, and I completely changed it in this version because I decided I was like for my next series I don't want to write a series that focuses on finding a murderer. I was just kind of like burned out a little bit on it, um, and I want to do something different. And I have like a notebook of ideas, and so I just kind of went to this idea, and I was like, this is something I want to do this one, and I want to make it about finding an artifact, not trying to track down, somebody who's a murderer. Um, and so I took this idea, which had been written completely. I had a whole draft, and it was like super traditional cozy mystery. Three suspects, someone dies at the museum, and she's on Sydney is on the case. Like that was the whole thing. There was no artifact, but but there was still a historical mystery that dealt with like President James Madison. Like that part was there, but there was no like artifact. It was just like a mystery. And I took it and completely gutted the entire story, like literally took out like 60,000 words, and redid it. And in doing that, Bess was no longer the bad. She was There was two bad guys, and she was one of them. So it's funny that you say that because she was.
It's a good choice because I was definitely thrown off.
Yeah. And again, without spoiling it, so there's like a little twist at the end, right? Did you see that coming?
No,
Any? Okay.
no. Well, okay, so I had like a little inkling, but I think it was towards the end that I got that inkling.
Okay.
So yeah, it was like there's clues where like you would see the gray hair and you'd be like, wait, what? So there were points where you could tell, but like it still didn't really see that coming.
Yeah. I think this is one of those stories where now that you go through the whole thing and then you go back and read it again, you can see everything. Like there's like I make sure that there's stuff is embedded in there that you can see. Like, there's clues around the librarian, um, about her, that like there's a picture in her in her office with a scribe, a Egyptian symbol of a scribe on a painting. There's a lot of, just there's just different things. And if you go back, then you'll be like, oh, okay, wow, I can see it. And it's fun for me again to kind of put those little breadcrumbs in there so that, one, I don't want you to pick up on it like the first time. I want to stump you. I don't want anybody to figure anything out. Like if you figure it out, I haven't done my job. But the second time you go through, you should be able to kind of like see, like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I like that you had Easter eggs.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have a question. What does your research process look like, especially for when to play with the fact and fiction in historical research?
Right. It is all over the place. No, I make a list basically of different things that I need to know. So but even before I like start the story, like I just kind of have a running list of like what I need to research. And I'll just like do deep dives online, and find information, look at videos on YouTube, find articles, go to newspaper.com and find old articles, um, go to Google Books and look at old books. I just do like, a lot of research. Just, I mean, more than I need actually, and then go back and then put it into the story. And of course, as I'm writing the story, sometimes something new will pop up that I didn't research, and so I will stop everything that I'm doing and like research for a couple hours or a day or something like that until like, okay, I'm an expert on King James version of demonology now. And I'm only gonna put like a few lines in the story about it, but like I'm gonna know everything possible. Like I learned so much. I was like, I should do like YouTube videos on all this extra stuff, but I don't have the bandwidth to do that. But like but I think part of the reasons that I write is just to give me an excuse to research stuff, like because I research anyway. My sister and I love to research these kind of like crazy topics, and then we'll like she's in Charleston now, and I'm in North Carolina, and like we'll call each other up and talk about like certain things and like conspiracy theories and like they found this bone in like of a mastodon and such and what does it mean, and just have these like crazy conversations, but it's like that kind of stuff, all that stuff I put into my stories. I'm trying to think, did you think about Gabe? He's not a
Gabe.
heavy Gabe. He's yeah, in the whole Tom Josiah Willoughby, like he's based on Thomas Day,
Mhm.
which um which he's got like a real a real like cottage slash museum in Yanceyville, North Carolina, which I have visited, and he wasn't really he wasn't involved in espionage, but he did create furniture for presidents and governors and things like that. So I was all I just in North Carolina. I just grew up knowing that he was like a famous North Carolinian, and I
Mhm.
always wanted to write something about him. And I didn't want to put him in there specifically. I mean, that could be copyright. Like he still has family, So I'm like, I'm going to create a character that's loosely based on his life, but and initially I didn't even have I had Gabe in the story, but he was not going to be a family member. But then I decided it would be cool to like do that. What did you think about their burgeoning romance?
I felt like it was just enough for the first story. Because the first story, you're really just trying to figure out like what is happening with this world. So it was good. And I feel like it was just enough for the story. It was good.
Yeah, we will explore it more in the second.
Yeah. Yay. What's your writing process like? Also, what characters or project have been the most difficult for you to release as far as letting go and turning it over to the reader?
um, okay, so my writing process is I come up with an idea, and so I have like a notebook or else a document that just has ideas that I write down, and then every now and then I'll go back and I'll kind of flesh them out, and sometimes I'll have just like bullet points of what that idea could be, or if I'm really into it, I will end up writing like a whole like outline or synopsis or something like that, and that's how I know which one I need to work on next because it's the one that I'm more interested in. And so once I get an idea, I will just set a goal to write. um I kind of binge write. So I will like take like a week and try to clear my schedule, my other responsibilities, and just write for like 6 hours a day and just kind of bang it out until I'm like burned out on the concept, and then I'll take like a week or two off, and then I'll come back and I'll do it again. Um, it's about I just write until I can't write anymore. There's just nothing. There's no more imagination. There's no creativity. It's all gone. And then yeah, and once I get a draft, I'll sit it down for like a week or two, come back with fresh eyes, edit it, and revise it, and kind of go back and do that for about 2 or 3 months, and then send it off to my editor. I think this one was the most difficult because there was so much stuff in the story, so much happening, and so many historical facts, and I really wanted to make sure that I got it right. And so I think I kind of held on to this one because I was like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Does it need more editing? Is the reader going to understand like all this history? Is the mythology going to make sense? And so for that reason, I just like I kept saying, let me get another beta reader. Let me get another beta reader. And after a while, it's like, okay, you got to stop. And so I was very like, are people going to get the story? Like there's just so much in it, and it is different. It's like a mashup of genres, right? It doesn't fit neatly into like it's not cozy mystery at all. It's not, it's got sci-fi, it's got fantasy, it's an adventure, it's a treasure hunt. It's a lot of different things. So I was just like, I just kept feeling like it wasn't ready. But then I realized like I'm never gonna feel that. And then when it went to NetGalley and I started reading reviews, the first like 10 reviews were all horrible. The very first 10. And then I was like, okay, let me start looking at these reviews. And then other reviews started coming in. I was like, okay, here's my people. Because the first 10, it was more like, oh, I thought this was like a certain book based on the cover. Because the cover is very witchy and fantasy. And it's not quite that. Um, and then the reviews started coming in and they were good. And I was like, phew, okay, they got it. And I started like people were like, oh my God, I love the history, I love the mythology. And, you know, I definitely think every book is not for every person, but if you can match the reader with the book, then, so I think that there's a very specific readership for my book. But I do think that people that like my first series will like this one. It's different, but there's still some commonality between, there's a lot of family, there's coziness, small town. You have a young woman coming into this space and trying to like figure out who she is and that kind of stuff. So I want it to be different, but still enough close enough to my readers, whoever they are, will like everything that I write.
Okay, so we have a question. Who designed the cover of the
I don't know her name. That went through the publisher. That's a good question because I do know who did my Enchanted Bay mystery series. I tagged her like online, but I don't know who did this cover, but it's beautiful. Yeah, it might actually be in the like their name could be like on the cover inside the book. I actually don't know, but whoever did it, they did a great job. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I got one of those covers. Those like, those like high fantasy covers. I was like, this is gorgeous. So I was really happy with that. I think I probably cried, but like one little tear. I was like, this is good. Yeah.
book? Okay, so how do you manage expectations, either from readers, publishers, or from yourself?
So social media is good for that. Um, so when this one, before it came out, I did a lot of kind of different, just like videos and things, kind of setting it up. Like this is talking about historically about witch hunts and about, it's going to talk, there's going to be a discussion of like, what is magic, kind of those broader questions. And then just like, like I said, I went to Thomas Day's museum and I did some videos about like the historical stuff. And so I just try to talk about it on social media to like let people know this is what the story is about. So it's just like, marketing and promo. And but in terms for publishers, um, I mean, they know going in what it is because, they're not going to buy it without knowing. And like I said, this was on proposal, but they had a very detailed, like 14-page outline, like of what the story is. So, so they knew, like, what it was. The title was different. It was initially called, I think it was the Madison Conspiracy or the Madison Intrigue. I can't remember. Which kind of shows you, like, it was the witchiness was not like the focal point. It was more about like this historical mystery, American history. But as I revised the story, President Madison's role decreased. He was like, when I first wrote it, there was a prologue and it was him in like 1812, like, looking at his house in the window and thinking about like the problems with the war, and like I was gonna, it was just set up like that. It was totally different. And then he was actually like in flashbacks. He was in the story a lot, and then I changed it. I was like, let's make the story about like the main character. Like, it's not actually about President Madison. Like, that's not the focal point. So I was like, let's change the title. What did you think about like the story with the grandmother? Kind of the
That was
revelations of,
interesting. That was interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that you had that set up in the story, especially the outcome towards the end, with the revelation. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, when I wrote it, the whole time I was like, does the grandmother know anything about what's going on, or does she not? So I kind of made that decision like at the very end because I wasn't sure. Cause I was like, she would know something. Wouldn't she know something? She has to know something. But I just, I went with the way that I did.
Nobody else says anything else. I guess
Mhm.
we're done. But thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been fun.